Welcome to Personal Development Mastery Podcast, episode 333. So, last week I went and did a 3-day silent meditation retreat, a Vipassana retreat. And if you have been listening to the podcast for a while, you might remember that last year I did a 10-day silent meditation retreat, for which I had recorded an extensive special episode with all my experience, lessons, the actual Vipassana meditation technique and so on. And you can listen to that episode too if you want. And today, in this short episode, I will discuss what I learned from doing the 3-day silent meditation retreat. So, if you're interested in meditation, even more if you're interested in a silent meditation retreat, then keep listening because there's going to be some very interesting things for you to discover. And let me start by sharing why I decided to do such a thing, to go through 3 days of silence. And there are two main reasons. The first one is that when I did the 10-day retreat last year, I enjoyed it so much. Well, despite the huge challenges, it was a rewarding experience, an insightful and enlightening experience. And doing again a retreat of a shorter duration this time was something that I wanted to do, or in a way I needed to do. The second reason why I decided to go was that after I finished my 10-day retreat last year, I started practicing this specific kind of meditation, Vipassana meditation, every day. Unfortunately, and I'm going to be completely transparent with you here, unfortunately over time, over the following weeks and months, the momentum started waning away. It started to decline. So around the second quarter of this year, I stopped practicing it completely and I went back to the previous technique of meditation that I was using, which in this particular case is via a meditation app called Waking Up by Sam Harris. And even though I enjoy and find value in meditating using the app, I realized that personally, Vipassana meditation was more suited to me. I found it more beneficial. I found that I could go deeper, concentrate more easily, and so on. However, as you probably are aware, once you lose momentum, it's not that easy to pick it up again. To use that phrase, if you fall from the horse, the more you leave it without getting back on the horse, the more difficult it gets. So, the second and most important reason why I wanted to do the 3-day retreat was this kind of a refresher course, something that would reignite my momentum in this particular meditation practice. Of course, apart from these two reasons, another motivator for me to go again was that the journey of personal development and self-mastery that I'm on, I feel it is connected with the path of spiritual evolution, if you want, or the journey to realize my spiritual nature. And for me, meditation, apart from the proven benefits it offers, like calming your mind or improving your concentration, your health, lowering your blood pressure, all these wonderful things. For me, meditation also has this deep-rooted spiritual aspect. So these were the main reasons that I revisited the center that I did my 10-day retreat last year. And one thing to clarify here is that this 3-day course is only available to students that have previously completed a 10-day course. So if you were thinking to start your silent meditation experience with a 3-day course, which admittedly is easier and much more practical as well, because it's easier to find 3.5 days in your schedule than to find and block out 10 days. Unfortunately, that is not the case. You can't do a 3-day course unless you have done a 10-day course. For me, having experienced the 10-day course, I realize very well why it is like that. Because in 10 days, you have the time to really go deep and have insights that are difficult, if not impossible, to have in just 3 days. It makes sense. The more days you are immersed in this silent environment, meditating all day without having any distractions, the further you can go into the depths of the mind and the more insights you can have. So, having said all that, let me describe my experience during these 3 days. The Vipassana center that I attended the course is in a rural area of the UK called Suffolk, and it is the same center that I did my 10-day retreat last year. When I arrived there, I had a big smile and a big sense of satisfaction internally, being in that familiar environment that I had spent 10 days the previous year, and I had all those realizations. And again, if you are interested in finding out more about those, I recorded a very detailed podcast episode last year, which you will find the link in the show notes. And so, in terms of the actual experience, the course started in the evening of Wednesday, which was, let's say, the day 0. And let me start first by explaining a few things of how it works. During the course, there is no speaking, there is no reading or writing, there are no phones, there is no communication with the outside world. In other words, there are no distractions. One is left to face and work with only their own mind. The days have a very specific and strict schedule, so the gong to wake us up would be rung at 4 a.m. and at 4:30 a.m. is the first session of meditation. Then there is breakfast at 6:30 and a rest break. Then at 8, another meditation session. At 11 o'clock, there's the lunch break, and I will talk a bit more about the meal times in a moment. The day pretty much carries on in a similar way, ending at 9 p.m. with lights out at 9:30. In total, each day we would meditate for around 10 to 11 hours. One other thing to mention is that we were about 80 participants, 80 students, and what happens in this retreat is that the male and female students are separated. So we have different living quarters and different dining rooms. The only place that we get together is the meditation hall, even though we are completely on the opposite sides of the room. And generally, as one of the rules there is to avoid eye contact with the other students, because the whole point is to work with yourself, work as if in isolation, as if you were on your own. Before I discuss my personal experience and insights, there is one last thing I will mention here, and that's coming back to the meal times I was saying earlier. So, during the full 10-day course, the new students are allowed a light dinner at 5 p.m. However, for the old students, and in this particular case, all of us there were old students, since we all had already completed a 10-day course in the past. So, for the old students, there is no dinner. There is only tea or lemon water, and that happens basically because it deepens one's meditation practice. For me, as a side note here, it gave me the opportunity for 2 days at least to have a 19-hour intermittent fasting, because breakfast would be at 6:30 and we would finish eating our lunch before 12 noon. So that gave about a 5-hour window of time-restricted eating, which I actually enjoyed, and it reinforced in me the conviction that I can easily do that as an intermittent fasting practice whenever I want. And in terms of my actual experience, the first thing that I will share is that, to my surprise, it was harder than I thought it would be, especially day one. I was expecting that having done 10 days last year, doing only 3 days would be much easier. But that was not what I experienced. And reflecting on this, I believe that the reason was that some time of adjustment to this routine is necessary. So that came as a surprise to me to find that it was more difficult than I thought it would be. And also a great lesson for me not to underestimate the challenges that are inherent in this retreat, in this experience. Of course, it is so much worth it, and the challenge is necessary for one to advance and grow in their life. During the meditations, I had some powerful moments. Before I started the course, I had set my intention to have more awareness or an insight, or simply put, to gain some clarity about my next steps. And I certainly did have that. And one of the things that I got clarity about as a next step was the direction of Personal Development Mastery podcast. And I'm going to share these things with you, not today, but in a couple of weeks, because the podcast will take a different direction. I will leave it to that for now as a surprise to build suspense and not spoil it at the moment. So stay tuned for more of that. And well, before I start concluding this episode, let me also briefly discuss a couple of things. The first is a very brief description about the technique of Vipassana meditation. So there are 2 stages. The first one is to observe the natural breath without changing it, just observing it. And the more you do it, the more you sharpen your concentration of the mind. The second stage follows this sharpened awareness of the mind. And this second stage is observing by scanning the body, observing the changing nature of the physical structure and also of the mental structure. By observing the changing nature of the body's sensations, one comes to realize the impermanence of these sensations, and generally the impermanence as a universal truth. So that's an overly simplified explanation of the technique, and I had gone into much more detail about all this in the episode I did last year about Vipassana. And again, if you find this interesting, you will find the link in the show notes so you can listen to that episode in more detail. As a conclusion, or as a result of all this, I have now made the commitment this time to practice every day. Well, I practice meditation every day anyway, but I mean to practice Vipassana meditation every day. And since I have returned, I have been doing it every day. I will invite you, if any of this sounds interesting, if you are intrigued by this, to explore the possibility of attending a Vipassana course yourself. They have centers that do courses all around the world in different languages, and you will find a link to the Vipassana website in the show notes. Also, if you have any questions about what I shared, feel free to reach out and I'll be happy to discuss with you. And if you need some encouragement towards finding the determination to do a silent meditation retreat, I can certainly help you with that. Thank you for listening. I hope you found it useful, and I look forward to your comments or questions about it. And before I leave you for today, I will share one more time that as my listener, you can get my first book, 88 Actionable Insights for Life, for free and exclusively also before its official public launch. You can go to agikeramidas.com/88 and you can download your free copy. As a final reminder, for the time being, the podcast has one episode a week. It's Monday and not two. This is going to change back to 2 episodes a week very soon, in the next couple of weeks. And as I hinted earlier, some exciting changes are coming up. I'm not going to reveal anything else yet, just stay tuned. Until next time, stand out, don't fit in,